The return of the Premier League is finally upon us. Another season of madness, excitement and general turmoil and stress among all fans. I think we can all appreciate, especially as an Arsenal fan myself. Welcome everybody to something a little bit different on the channel. My name is Craig, and for the first time ever, we're going to be going through what my predictions are for the coming Premier League season. So yes, welcome everybody to my Premier League predictions for the 2023-24 season. As mentioned in the intro, this is the first time I'm ever doing this on YouTube. So if you do go on to enjoy this video, and if you feel that you have a different opinion of how you think the Premier League is going to shape up this season, feel free to sound off in the comments down below. Make sure also to hit that like button as well. It'd be quite interesting actually to hear what your views are on these predictions, or even your own ones as well. But for this video, what we are going to be doing, we are going to be using a tier list. It's what I think is going to happen in the Premier League for all 20 clubs as we go from 20th all the way up to 1st. Before we do get started, just a quick disclaimer that this video is being recorded on the Thursday the 10th of August, so anything that actually happens, regardless of transfers or any other behind the scenes happenings, obviously won't be in contention or considered in this video. But in the meantime, we're going to get started with who I think is going to finish in 20th and therefore bottom of the Premier League. Not going to lie, this is going to seem too easy of a pick, but Luton Town, I don't see any other option for finishing bottom of the Premier League, unfortunately. And that's because the big question at the moment for Luton is, are they ready for the Premier League? Yes, it has been a very feel-good story for the club, rising from the National League all the way up to the Premier League in I think the span of about 10 years. But it was a very unexpected promotion through the Championship playoffs, and I don't know if their squad is even ready for it. Certainly their ground isn't. I mean, their first home league game of the season has already been postponed against Burnley next week. Now, admittedly, I don't know the vast majority of Luton's squad. They're not a team I actually paid that much attention to for most of last season anyway, but there is one player who head coach Rob Edwards may be feeling very happy and very promising about for the coming season, and that is former Manchester United youth player Tahith Chong, who has been brought in this summer, along with Ross Barkley, who has been signed on a free. He will provide some Premier League experience for the club. Personally, I do find it difficult to see Luton surviving this season, and as much as I want them to prove me wrong, and I'll more than happily hold my hands up and say, you know what, I got it wrong, they did well to survive, it's going to be a season of massive struggle for the club. In 19th place, my pick to go down with Luton is actually Everton, and probably for the most obvious reasons so far. Everton, when are you going to learn your lesson? Honestly, last season they only scored 34 goals in 38 league games, so common sense dictates they needed a striker this summer. It's the 10th of August currently, and they still have not signed a striker. Yes, I do understand, and I've seen the news that they are currently in talks with Sporting Lisbon to sign Portuguese under-19 international Youssef Chamiti, I think his name is. But even then, he's still a youngster who is very unproven at the top level. I think he only made his debut in the last year or two for Sporting Lisbon, making a handful of appearances. But I also understand that money is very, very tight at Everton because of all the financial mismanagement. I mean, spending over £500 million on players, average players to be exact, was never the best strategy. They cannot rely on Dominic Calvert-Lewin for like the 6th year in a row. The man has prioritised his modelling career over the club. And as for Neil Maupay, well, 1 goal in the last 40 League and Cup appearances. How about that for a stat? But all of his toxicity around Goodison Park and no budgets for Sean Dyche to work with, or lack thereof, is a good reason why they've only bought in effectively 2 players. The 38-year-old Ashley Young at left back, and the player, who's that? Arnaud Danjuma, that was it. Arnaud Danjuma, who turned Everton down in January originally to go to Tottenham on loan. What are we doing here, Everton? What are we doing here? Seriously, get this sorted. Get yourself a striker who can score goals or you will be relegated this season. You can't keep flirting with relegation, otherwise you will be opening your new stadium on the docks to EFL Championship football next season. In 18th place, another club who I feel are also in a bit of disarray at the moment, and a club that I feel are going backwards very, very quickly, has to be Wolves. I feel they're going to be joining Everton and Luton in going down this season. Yeah, there's only one word I can use to describe Wolves at this point, and that is directionless. They lost their manager, Julien Lopetegui, apologies for the pronunciation. They lost him last week after he resigned, after the Wolves board broke 2 transfer promises to him over the entire summer. Basically, there's no money, and now they can't even bring in free transfers. But new boss Gary O'Neill has been brought in just 5 days before the start of the season. 5 days, what's he going to do? What's he going to teach the players in 5 days? They could actually end up cut adrift at the bottom of the table after what, maybe a handful of games this season, because they're effectively going to have to start from scratch. Couple this as well with the fact that they've let go of around £90 million worth of talent, including influential captain Ruben Neves to the Saudi Pro League, and it's looking like a season of struggle for poor old Wolves at the bottom of the table. In 17th place is a side who have just been promoted, but I feel are going to struggle heavily in avoiding the drop, and that is going to be Sheffield United. Credit to Paul Heckingbottom, he did very well to get Sheffield United up in 2nd place behind Burnley last season, but they're going to have a mammoth task in order to try and keep themselves up this season after losing their main striker, Iliman Ndia, I think I pronounced that correctly. 14 goals and 11 assists last season in the Championship. I think they will struggle to get those goals back for this season. Couple this with the expected loss of Sander Berg to, of all teams, Burnley, who have just come up with them and are expected to struggle alongside Sheffield United this season. That's a big hammer blow to the confidence of the Sheffield United locker room. The only thing I can suggest that would actually help them stay up this season is if they turn Bramwell Lane into a fortress and the fans get behind them, much like the Nottingham Forest fans did at the City Ground last season. And ultimately, I think that's what will keep Sheffield United up this season. And speaking of Nottingham Forest, I don't really see much change for them this season. I think they're still going to be struggling down at the bottom end of the Premier League. Can Steve Cooper keep Forest up again? They struggled last season, especially to try and gel in the 50,000 players that they bought last summer, but eventually they helped turn City Ground into a massive fortress where it was just difficult for any team travelling there, especially with all the fans just getting on their back at any given opportunity. I think just based off that alone, and the fact that Forest have been very restrained in this transfer window, I mean, how could they not? I think that'll be enough to keep them up this season, but they are going to have to try and keep a hold of Brennan Johnson, who is getting some admirers from a lot of other mid-table Premier League clubs. In 15th place, I don't see too much change as well for Bournemouth. I think they're going to be thereabouts in lower mid-table this season, probably just keeping their heads above water when it matters. After the early season thumping that Bournemouth got 9-0 at Anfield, I think that was like last August, flipping heck, that's gone very quickly. New manager Gary O'Neill then worked magic to keep Bournemouth up and got rewarded with the sack in June. It's a bit harsh, personally, but such is the nature of the Premier League that the board feel that they should be aiming for higher. Cue the hiring of new manager Andoni Iraola, formerly of Rayo Vallecano in Spain, I think in La Liga, unless they had actually gone down long before. He is known for exciting football in Spain, but he needs to stamp his authority on the team very quickly, or he's going to face some early calls for his sacking. Bournemouth have also been quite ambitious in the transfer market. They've signed Justin Kluivert for £10 million from Roma, which is a kind of a statement buy for them. At the same time, they're also rumoured to be closing in on 2 deals for Alex Scott, the highly rated prodigy from Bristol City, and also hijacking a deal from Leeds United for Max Aarons, the right back from Norwich. Not going to lie, those are going to be 2 very, very good signings. Certainly, if not for now, but in the future for Bournemouth. Alright, the first big prediction for me, and that is going to be West Ham in 14th place, despite the fact that they are the reigning UEFA Europa Conference League winners. They may have a European trophy under their belt from last season, but let's not make any mistake. West Ham were woeful in the Premier League last season. They only survived, I think, with about 2 or 3 games to go, eventually finishing fairly clear of the relegation zone. But they're going to need to make a lot more signings than they have so far. The one signing they have made is Edson Alvarez for £35 million from Ajax, and that was literally confirmed earlier today as of the time of recording on the 10th of August. And I know they're very close to signing Harry Maguire from Manchester United and James Ward-Prowse from Southampton, but even if they get those deals over the line, they are going to need a little bit more, especially in their forward line. Scamacca didn't hit the ground running last season. Maybe he'll be fine in his second season in England, but if he doesn't produce the goods, there's only so many times you can rely on Antonio Valencia. I'm assuming he's still at West Ham anyway, I might need to check that. In 13th place, the ever perennial mid-table hangers-on, and that will be Crystal Palace. I mean, you could put them anywhere in mid-table and it would probably make sense for them. Yeah, Crystal Palace are just one of those clubs that hang around mid-table, aren't they? They're just going to be thereabouts, unless they have a really poor season, in which case they usually end up going down. But who knows? I'm being very optimistic for them this season, despite the fact they've lost Louis Saha after how many years of threatening to sell him? Except they let him go on a free. All that money that they could have made, but then I suppose nobody wanted to pay the £80 million price tag for him, did they? Lots of money lost, but it also does weaken the squad in general. Despite that, they do still have Eberechi Eze, who is now capped for England. He's a promising young player for them who will only get better. Whether he sees out the season still at Crystal Palace will depend on his performances and on how much other big teams are willing to shell out for him. Despite that, I fully expect Roy Hodgson to just plod along with this side in mid-table. I mean, with Roy Hodgson, if he stays in charge for the whole season, I don't see them going down. At the same time, I don't see them doing anything spectacular either. We're into higher mid-table now, and this is where I feel Fulham are going to find themselves after an impressive first season back last year. Yet despite that impressive first season back in the Premier League under Marco Silva, I don't see Fulham actually being as high as they were. They had a great first half of the season where I think they were touching 5th or 6th at one point, which was kind of mad for them. That must have been nosebleed territory for the club. But then they fell away badly in the second half of last season, and that might be something that affects them badly this season. I do think they still have enough about them, especially with Alexander Mitrovic still up front and João Paulinho. Did I even say that name right? João Paulinho, there you go. Playing for them, who are their 2-star players. The big concern for Fulham is, though, if Mitrovic, as rumoured, does go to the Saudi Pro League, surprise, surprise, we're going to be hearing a lot of that in this video, then they're going to be in big trouble unless they can replace him. Into 11th place now, and I actually have some good optimism for newly promoted Burnley, and not just because they won the Championship last season, but also because they are coming up from the Championship on a real high of momentum. Because of Vincent Kompany, after his first season at the club, he's actually brought something quite radical to Burnley. Actual football, all jokes aside. It has been a breath of fresh air for the club. It's been much needed after many years of turgid football, albeit efficient football under Sean Dyche, but they are easily the strongest of the 3 clubs who have come up. And dare I say that the addition of James Trafford in goal for £19 million from Manchester City, after his heroics in the England under-21s this summer, dare I say that might not only aid their survival bids, but also maybe push them up into that mid-table position. Certainly that's how big I think that transfer could be for Burnley this season. Into the top 10 now of the Premier League, and I do feel this is a position that has Brentford's name written all over it. A club of remarkable consistency. I think they're more than good enough for a top 10 finish. And that's the key phrase for Brentford so far. Model of consistency since they've been in the Premier League. I think, what have they finished? 11th, 9th last season, and now I'm saying 10th this season. I think that's about right for a club who are looking to stabilise themselves in the Premier League for a few years before doing anything deemed too risky for the club right now. I mean, they have pushed the boat out on Nathan Collins for a club record fee of £23 million, but despite that they are going to miss their main man, Ivan Toney, up front until January because he's still serving that suspension for breaching betting rules, which fall foul of the FA guidelines, of course. So when he comes back in January, once he gets up that match fitness, I think Brentford will be more than fine. But until then, as long as they've got enough players who will perform on a regular basis, they will be fine. In 9th place now, and this is going to be one that might hurt the Villa fans a little bit after last season, but I think a little bit of a slip, yet a top 10 finish for Aston Villa is on the cards for this season. Unai Emery is a great organiser of teams. I've seen that firsthand at Arsenal. It was just the language barrier that kind of got him in the end. But the problem is, as much as Emery can organise a team, he's going to have to juggle an Aston Villa squad between Europe and the Premier League. This is assuming that they get through the Europa Conference League qualifiers, but then I think the vast majority of English teams are stronger than the vast majority of teams in that competition in the first place. West Ham are probably the best examples of that. Despite this though, they have made some impressive signings throughout this summer. Pau Torres, the highly rated defender from Villarreal, Emery's old team of course, as well as Yuri Tielemans on a free from Leicester. And I think that's going to be a major coup for the club for this season. He's a hard-working midfielder and coming in for a free. Not very often you get a player of that quality coming in on a free in the Premier League. And the final position for the higher mid-table, this is going to be a bit of a controversial one I feel, because many people, many neutrals more to the point, have been enjoying what Brighton and Hove Albion have been putting down in the Premier League over the last year. But I think they're not going to be any higher than probably 8th place this time around. And the first season of European football is why I think Brighton will finish in 8th. Much like with Aston Villa, they have to juggle Premier League and Europe. But Brighton, unlike Aston Villa, they're going into the higher competition that is the Europa League, which is going to provide a bit of a challenge for them. Certainly with the number of quality teams that end up in the Europa League these days, especially if they make the knockout rounds. They still have a very good squad, and that's even with the loss of Alexi McAllister to Liverpool, the World Cup winner, leaving Brighton's midfield, which is a big shame for them. That is a big loss. At the same time, they also have the impending loss of Moises Caicedo, most likely to Chelsea. Despite this though, you've still got Julio Enciso, who has broken into the team last season, and he looks a very promising young player, the young Paraguayan. Is he a full international now, youth international? But regardless, there's a bright future ahead of him, with Manchester City sniffing around him apparently. Couple that with the additions such as João Pedro from Watford. I was wondering when he was going to leave Watford eventually. The man's just too good for them. Also Bart Verbruggen from Anderlecht, the young Belgian goalkeeper who very highly rated, and he's got a big future ahead of him. I think he could do well in Brighton's goal for some time to come. As well as the experienced man himself, the utility player that everybody loves / hates / makes fun of, James Milner. He comes in as the experienced head in the locker room. I think that can only be a good thing for a young Brighton side, which is going to need 1 or 2 leaders. Despite all this, Brighton, they will have to juggle Europe and Premier League, as I mentioned. I think that will get difficult for them at times, but I think the squad is still good enough for top 10. Maybe just a little bit more so than Aston Villa, which is why I see them in 8th place. In 7th place, and possibly the last European spot in the Premier League, depending how the cups go, yeah, I don't see anything more for Tottenham at this stage, especially depending how the saga of Harry Kane turns out. Is Harry Kane going? Is he staying? Nobody knows at this point. Apparently, as of today, again 10th of August 2023, a fee has been agreed between Tottenham and Bayern Munich. It's now just down to Harry Kane himself if he actually wants to go to Germany, which is making it harder for Tottenham to actually bring in a quality replacement up front, because Richarlison has not got the backing of the fans to actually fill Harry Kane's boots. Heung-min Son, he's as good of a player as he is and as important to Tottenham as he has been over the past several years. He had a very poor season last year, and he may rebound this season, but to the extent of Harry Kane and the goals that he's going to be taking with him, I don't know, especially as Son has now hit his 30s and his prime years appear to be deserting him potentially. We'll see how he goes this season. But despite that, some of those signings that they have made so far under new manager Ange Postecoglou have been very promising. Young defender Mickey van der Ven, I think over the last week or so he came in from Wolfsburg. I think he's going to be a quality defender, 6'3", very good in the air. He's going to be a danger. He's going to be a very big danger going forward for Tottenham. Couple this with James Maddison from Leicester City and Vicario to replace Hugo Lloris, finally, in the goal. He needed to be replaced for the last 2 or 3 years. Lloris has just been in absolute decline. There are positive signs for Spurs, especially some Spurs fans have said that they've been playing better in pre-season than they did most of last season. There's still huge question marks and a glaring problem if Harry Kane does leave. They better have some transfer targets lined up, or it's going to be a season of struggle. In 6th place, we will have the resurgence, I believe, of Chelsea after their woeful performance last season in finishing 12th. It would be way easier for me to just go through the list of players who have actually left Chelsea this summer. So, Kai Havertz, Mateo Kovacic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Mason Mounts, Christian Pulisic, Ethan Ampadu, Kalidou Koulibaly, Edouard Mendy, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Cesar Azpilicueta, N'Golo Kante, along with obviously a load of youngsters to go with it. But that just kind of says the absolute state of Chelsea's squad last season, when I think they had about 31 players in the training sessions at one point, which was ridiculous. That's far too many players. They spent over £600 million between 3 managers last season, and it brought them 12th place. What the heck? Despite all that, they finally got rid of a lot of the deadwood, as I've mentioned, and they finally brought in 2 strikers, Nicholas Jackson and Christopher Nkunku, the French international, who has unfortunately got injured, and he is set to be on the sidelines for a good while as he needs surgery for a injury I can't actually remember, but that's going to be a bit of a blow for Chelsea if they're hoping to start the season very strong. Couple this with the fact that Chelsea do not have any European competition for the first time in, I think, well over 15 years, unless there's a season I'm missing out. But this means that they can just fully focus on the league, and I think that will be a big reason why they will finish in the top 6 next season. I say top 6, it will probably be around 6th place. In 5th place, and despite the highs of last season, I can only see Newcastle finishing here. A strong campaign it will still be for them, but not quite as high as the highs of getting UCL football or Champions League football for this season. Sorry Newcastle fans, as great as the progress was last season for Eddie Howe's men, I just think that having to balance Champions League and Premier League football this season may just be a step too far for your what is turning out to be a great young squad. It will be a big test for them to handle European football for the first time in over 10 years, but with the likes of new signings Sandro Tonali, who by the way, I'm very jealous that you got him, because if we didn't get Declan Rice at Arsenal, I would have said go for Tonali instead. But with Tonali, Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes and Kieran Trippier, and a revitalised Joe Linton in your squad, along with Sven Botman and Nick Pope in defence and goal respectively, the future is looking very, very bright. I know there's a load of other players at Newcastle as well, but they're some of the most some of the most exciting prospects and talents on your team currently. And quite frankly, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be very excited for this season. If I'm proved wrong and you get into the top 4, I honestly wouldn't complain, because I could see it. The only reason I picked 5th for Newcastle this season is because I think there are 4 teams who are just that little bit stronger than you. And one of those teams that I'm going to pick for the top 4, in 4th place, will be Manchester United, as the resurgence under Erik ten Hag continues. Positive signs for Ten Hag in his first season as United manager. He won the EFL Cup to bring a trophy to Old Trafford, as well as the return of Champions League football for this season. Andre Onana comes in to replace the departed David De Gea after his contract expired. Harry Maguire is on his way out, Man United fans rejoicing as we speak. Mason Mount arriving to hopefully revitalise / kickstart his career after some lost time at Chelsea after the horrendous season that he and Chelsea had last year. Ten Hag will look for further progress for Manchester United this season, and I think they'll get that by getting into, or rather staying in the top 4 even, but I still think they are some way off the title because of even stronger teams than them. In 3rd place, one of the big powerhouses as well, possibly for the title even, but for the moment I'm just going to say that Liverpool will be looking to get back into the top 4, but there was a lot of complaints last season as well that their midfield, they kind of had to replace it. Job done. Out goes Naby Keita, out goes Jordan Henderson, out goes Fabinho, 2 of them to Saudi Arabia. I told you we were going to hear about them again. And in come two very exciting prospects for the Liverpool fans this season. In the mould of Alexi McAllister from Brighton, very, very good signing. He's going to be a very good attacking option for Liverpool this season. And on top of that, Dominik Szoboszlai, young Hungarian international who, I say young, he's like mid-20s now, isn't he? It's not 2020 all over again, but he's still a very, very exciting young player. Dead ball specialist as well. I think he'll add a lot. Both these guys will actually add a lot to Liverpool's midfield going forward next season. All they need to do is get Cody Gakpo and Salah scoring more often, and Liverpool, they're going to be dynamite going forward yet again. Also, on top of that, make sure that Ibrahima Konate and Virgil van Dijk stay fit, because they're going to be crucial to Liverpool's defensive efforts this season. And finally, we have second and first place. We're just going to do these two together because it won't really be that much of a shock otherwise. Now, you may have seen I've already got an Arsenal shirt on, but I'm still going to say that Arsenal will be finishing second, and that will mean I am picking Manchester City, surprise surprise, for another league title. It's safe to say that both these clubs have very, very strong squads going into this season. Arsenal especially have strengthened the midfield and defence with some very good versatile players, namely in the likes of Julian Timber, Declan Rice, of course, from West Ham United. We funded them £100 million, I don't know why they haven't spent most of that yet. But also with Kai Havertz from Chelsea. Now, many fans a bit dicey on Kai Havertz and what he can offer the Arsenal team after a poor season at Chelsea. Declan Rice comes in and brings massive leadership skills, as well as the man who's going to be doing the busy work in midfield between attack and defence. And as for Julian Timber, yeah, he's going to look very good across our entire defence, not midfield, defence. He's a left back, full back. He can also play centre back if needed. We're going to need someone like that who's going to give us great depth in defence. As far as this season's prospects go, I mean, they will obviously want to go one better than the title challenge that we had last season, where it unfortunately fell off. We just ran out of steam towards the end of the season, which is a shame. I think we will put on a title challenge, but I still think we'll fall short of City this season. I think City still have the strongest squad overall and depth. But I wouldn't rule out a European run and even a cup run in the quest for a trophy. And speaking of Manchester City, well, what is there left to say about them? They're chasing their 6th Premier League title in 7 seasons. That's approaching Bundesliga and Ligue 1 levels of dominance at this point, despite great title challenges that are happening. But they're just a strong outfit overall. Haaland, Foden and De Bruyne will be monsters again for them this season. Anybody who thinks otherwise, I think, needs to have a long, hard look at themselves. Yes, they lost Mahrez, who was a great backup option and someone with a bit of a match-winning mentality to him as well. And of course they lost Ike Gundogan, who was very popular in the dressing room. But this is something I feel that Man City would have prepared for, the fact that Gundogan was leaving, and the fact also that they're bringing in Vardiol for I think about £68 million will only strengthen City in defence, as well as going forward, because Vardiol is also very good at set pieces. Who would have thought for a defender? Personally, don't be surprised to see City dominate again. They started very slowly last season and then just roared right back and were just relentless in their pursuit of the title. As well as that, they're also the reigning European champions. This is a squad who knows how to get things done. So there you have it. There are the position predictions for the Premier League for the 2023-24 season. They are going to be showing up on the screen right now. What do you think of these predictions? Do you think there's any that are a bit too high, any that might be a bit too low? Do you think we'll have different Premier League champions? Do you think different teams will qualify for Europe or go down to the Championship? Let me know down in the comments, and also remember to hit that like button down below, smash the big red subscribe button so you don't miss future videos, future one-off videos such as this that you are watching right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you all so much for the support on the channel. It has been truly appreciated. If you are new, why not stick around? There's a video coming up right now that you can go and check out, including an entire series of Unemployed to Legend, which has been running on the channel for the last 6 months or so. Happy binging with it, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.